So without further ado, what I'd like to do is go ahead and get started. So with that, I'm going to minimize the chat box. Thank you. And yeah, minimize the chat box. And so welcome to Essential Tips for Creating Compelling Content in a Noisy and Virtual World. Real quick, a little bit about me. My name is Max Eisel. I've been working with Finalsite for about 7 years now. And I have worked with many of the schools that I have seen joining us today, and good to see so many familiar names. And unfortunately, I'm not seeing you in person, as I think all of us know we would love to be meeting at the conferences in person, the same way that I met so many of you either last year in New York at the AAIE conference, which was the last conference of the year, I think, for almost everyone. And many of you I'd also met at the ASA conference prior in Chile and those things. But I'm very excited to be presenting to you today, and I appreciate everyone joining. I do wish it was in person instead of via a webinar. So really, the word that you're going to hear today over and over and over again is compelling. And really, what is compelling? I mean, from a dictionary, it is evoking interest, attention, or admiration in a powerfully and irresistible way. And I think the big piece is, when you really unpack that, is you're trying to draw the attention of your audience. You're trying to pull in those people who visit your website, or who read your marketing email, or who read your newsletter, and you want to keep their attention. And also, you know, this idea of powerfully irresistible, in the sense that they look forward to the next e-newsletter. They go to the website because they know that they're going to get that information and those things. So the goals of compelling content are exactly those, right? They are to create awareness and to inspire an action. So first, in creating awareness, you want someone to stop the scroll. You know, when they're on their phone, what makes them stop scrolling up through the screen? What makes them click or open your email? How do you stand out in the inbox, and how do you catch people's attention and keep them there? And in the end, I mean, ultimately, the goal here is to convert them into an action, whether that's filling out an inquiry form, donating money, all those different things that you would have. So what makes creating compelling content difficult? So, you know, everyone is busy. And I mean, I think right here, this photo was actually in front, you know, of the school, in front of the Zoom. But let's be quite honest. Right now, we all live in a, if not fully virtual world, at least in a hybrid, or where we are spending a lot more time on the internet, in meetings and those kinds of things. So everyone is extremely busy, and different people want different things, and oftentimes they need different things. You know, maybe they're looking for a specific curriculum. So, you know, if a parent is moving, and they're moving from one IB school to another, it's absolutely essential in that they would need to find out if you're an IB school or not. You know, consistency is hard. It's really important, and all those kinds of things. But virtual right now, we're all virtual, so we're not meeting face to face. We're not able to get, you know, the group pictures, the action videos of students, and we're relying on a lot of other items. And the internet's crowded. I mean, there's a lot going on, and those things. And what your audience needs continues to evolve, and you need to evolve with them. And part of the reason for needing to continually update content and those things. So how do we know if content is not compelling? So first of all, on a website, you would know if your website's not compelling because you have a high number of bounces, you have a high number of exits, people spend a very short amount of time on your pages, and you have low conversions. You might get them to your admissions page, but they never fill out an inquiry. Email, pretty straightforward. Your emails aren't being opened, and when they are being opened, no one's clicking on anything. And again, no conversion. With social media, same thing. Low engagement, you're not getting likes, you're not getting comments, you're not getting shares. And that's how you can tell that your content is not something that's resonating because it's not compelling. 45 to 50% is considered a high bounce rate. 49% is the average open rate for school emails, and 5.6 is the average click-through rate for school emails. So that's one of those things that it's also important to keep a realistic view on what you're doing. If your click rate is 5% and you move it to 7%, that's a better than average rate and those things. So also figuring out what success looks like is important. Compelling content can be created by anyone, anywhere. It's more than a nice photo or a cool video. It's a way of approaching your entire content strategy. And I'm really going to show you a lot of examples and how to create compelling content and examples of what compelling content looks like. It's created by researching what content families are interested in and how they consume it and where they consume it. Now, I'm going to also be talking a lot about families, but this is also just as important if you're trying to recruit faculty and staff and those kinds of things. So compelling content needs to be created for your audience and figure out what they're interested in, how they will see it, and where they will see it. So the elements of a compelling message put together are method plus message plus medium plus experience. All that put together is what you need for compelling content. First, let's start by breaking down the method. The method is really the how. How do you plan to share this message? Are you planning to do a video? Is it going to be text? And by video, it's also some photo elements to that. And so it could be a combination of the above. So is it video and text put together? Is it photo series and text? Is it just text? And you can create compelling text. So then the message is the what. Is it about you or is it about them? Is it about you as the school or is it about them as a family and their experience? Is it a story? Is it something they care about? What's going to be the appropriate tone? You know, there's a completely different tone when you're approaching families and messaging as opposed to alumni or as opposed to recruiting teachers and those kinds of things. Who is it coming from? Is it being sent as the school? Is it being sent by the admissions director? Is it being sent by the head of school? And does it read as human? And what that means is that does it feel like it's personal from you as a person, or does this seem like a standardized, templated letter that everyone's getting and all you're doing is dropping in a name? And then also, is the message research oriented? And that can be if you're trying to find ways to recruit and enroll more families from the local community. You know, what are those things that people are looking for? Are you trying to expand your expat population and those kinds of things? So the medium is where. Where are you going to share this message? Will you be sharing it through the website? Will you be emailing this? Is this going in social media? Is this print? Are you printing a prospectus or a brochure? Are you doing a billboard? And those kinds of things. Is this going out through the mobile app? Or are you literally calling families directly or sending them text messages? All of these are the medium. And it can be oftentimes a combination of all of the, well, maybe not all of these, but it can be a combination of many of these put together from the where. And then, what is the experience once it's received? Is it easy to find this content? Does it load quickly? Does it feel like it's personalized? Is it specifically for me? Or is this so generic that it really doesn't feel like it's for me? Do I immediately get instant gratification? You have less than 7 seconds to make a first impression, and it's a lasting impression. So that instant gratification is key. Same thing with personalized, I guess is another way to say, does it feel like it's for me? Is it timely? And is this, when it says timely, is the information something that's important to me now? Or what is this information that I should have received weeks ago? Is this information that I really don't need now and would be more important to me in 2 or 3 months? And also, what's the length? The different kinds of length it really depends on a lot of these other pieces of what you're trying to do. So real quick, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just check the chat to see if anyone has posted any questions. It's fine if you post some questions here. I will try to get to them at the end. Please, feel free to put them into the chat. That way, you don't forget to ask them at the end. So one of the things is that, going back to the earlier page, is that, a lot of times people are just like, we have to do a video, we have to do a video, we have to do a video. But just because it's a video doesn't necessarily mean that it's immediately interesting to your audience. And, things like tuition pages tend not to get a lot of attention by when you're creating content, because a lot of times people just say, well, that's just going to be boring. And instead, you could really spend some time, and this goes back to that idea of text and text content and how you share it. And this could be a major selling point for your school and ways to approach it. And also, one of the ways to minimize the effect of sticker shock is to first explain why parents should spend money to send children to your school, and instead of just putting the numbers and a spreadsheet and a calculation sheet for how much it's going to cost. And so a tuition page does not necessarily need to be boring. So first of all, let's talk about understanding your audience. So I'm sure at your school you've done persona exercises and you've figured out the different personas and different roles and who you're trying to speak with and who you're trying to market to and who are you trying to recruit. But who do we need to reach? And if it's students, if it's parents, if it's faculty, if it's alumni, the how and the where is going to be completely different. And so if you're trying to relate with students and you're trying to reach and get the message to students, the recommended ways are different than if you're trying to get that same message to parents, as opposed to faculty and as opposed to your alumni. Now, your alumni, you also need to know that if your school's only been around for 15, 20 years, your alumni are going to look completely different than the school that has an alumni network that pulls from 100 years of tradition. And you'll have to adjust your how and where based on that. So what do they tend to care about? Students tend to care about being social. They want to have a sense of accomplishment and getting to that next step. Whereas parents, faculty, and alumni have things like parents want to know about student safety. What's my return on investment? What's the school's financial stability? Do I need to worry about my child's being at the school for 2 years and it closes? Faculty, they also want to know about safety. They want to know about what are the professional development opportunities. And again, it's extremely important to faculty about what's the financial stability and will you be a place that will be around for the entire time. Career advancement, networking, and school's financial stability are things that the alumni and your alumni network care about. But one of the key things to also keep in mind is that within these groups, you also have millennials, you have Generation X, and with the alumni and parents, you're going to have baby boomers and all the different levels. But in the end, what's interesting is as the digital natives become part of these groups and Gen Z, that their attention span with digital is actually a second more than the prior generations. So that's also something to keep in mind as you're creating compelling content. When should you reach out to them? So the normal ebb and flow and routine. Remember, this is the same. It's not going to be any different than when you're the way you use technology. It's one of those things that early, right when they wake up, what's one of the first things most every person does is checks their phone. During carpool, morning and afternoon, they're sitting waiting for pickup or dropping off. It's a good time to catch people with the message. Dinner before and after, and Sundays while they prep for the week ahead. And so one of the things to keep in mind as well is that you're not the only one sending out messages. And if you want to catch the attention of parents, oftentimes sending information during the business hours isn't the best time because a lot of people are busy with work and their work emails and their work communications and all those kinds of things. So that's why you can be very effective on the weekends sometimes, depending on and those pieces. And it's important to track, the timing and how well that works. So before you push it out, you want to ask yourself, who do I need to reach? What does that person want to see? How can we share it in a way they'll enjoy it? Where do they prefer to consume it? And where will we share it? If you're sending something out for students and you all of a sudden choose to post it to Facebook, we all know that Facebook is not the best method to reach someone who's younger than 18. Whereas if you wanted to post something that you wanted parents to consume, putting it on something that is used by mostly student age population, like a TikTok, would not be the best place to reach a 40+ parent. Only 16% of parents consider Facebook an effective way to provide school-related information. Facebook is seen as a place that's social, but not necessarily seen as a place for reliable information. So posting things to Facebook comes with the risk that it can be seen as unreliable. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And especially if you're posting to Facebook, consider also posting it to the website. And then you also want to create things so that you can share it across many mediums. So for example, what we just talked about, if you post it to Facebook, also posting it elsewhere. So does quality matter right now? And I would have to say, absolutely, quality always matters, and those kinds of things. And so during this time of pandemic, this is the kind of time that parents are relying on absolute time-sensitive, critical information, as in so many places, the policies, the rules, the regulations, the schedules, the timetables, all these things are changing on a moment's notice. It could be you have the best laid out plan that you've been working on for 4 weeks, and then suddenly there's a spike, there's a surge, there's a change, the vaccines, all these things, and then overnight everything has to change. So one of the things that's so key and critical is to continue, so that, remember, you're not the only group that's trying to reach parents during this time of pandemic, and those kinds of things. We're all spending an inordinate amount of time in Zoom meetings or in Google Meets or any of the other ways. And so really, one of the ways to still grab attention is to share positive content. I mean, we're so bombarded right now with negativity that finding all the little ways that we can be positive and those things is so key and so critical. We also want to see familiar faces. I have spent the last 11 months working from home, and there are many people who I used to see every other month or so that I haven't seen in a year. And we want to see familiar faces. We want to share in this experience together as a school community and those kinds of things. And then the content needs to be helpful. I need to know, how are we doing? How are we planning to do hybrid? How are we planning to transition from distance learning back to in-person? What days are we planning to do hybrid? All those kinds of things. And along with positive, we also need reassurance that, one, things are stable. My child's still going to learn. My child will get the same quality education that we've learned to expect. Real and authentic stories. So many schools that I've talked to about their websites have asked, well, what about all the photos? We can't do photos because all the kids have to wear masks. Well, everyone right now is being asked to wear masks. So that's real, that's authentic. That's what your campus looks like right now. If you're lucky enough to have students on campus, then that is reassuring. That is positive content. And in the end, it's authentic and real that they're wearing masks, that they're sitting at certain distance apart, 2 meters, all desks are 2 meters apart. And so it's difficult that you can't have photos right now of students, or well, you can't have current photos of students working collaboratively on a lab together and smiling, and the teachers in close working with them as well, because that's not the world that we live in right now. And so to look timely and real and relevant, it's okay to show masks, because that's what the world looks like right now. Strive for unique over normal. And one of the ways that to think about that is, I saw a really powerful photo the other day where it was how a parent sitting at a table working, and what looked to be a 4-year-old sitting at a coffee table working on a laptop together. And it was unique in the way that the photo was framed and done, that it stood out that this child is doing distance learning and those kinds of things. So really, you're trying to find ways to be unique and show how your school is unique in the same way that you want to stand out for how you're different than other schools in the region or in the other schools in the area. You also want to stand out for the way you're approaching this. Great way to do this is to crowdsource, and that is to pull in from your social media or other ways. So you want to offer, and and this really, and I know I keep saying during this pandemic, during COVID, but these all apply at any time. And so one of the things is you want to offer people an experience. Give families a recipe to try over the weekend instead of just asking for photos during the week. And one of the ways there is that, talk to your teachers. What are some of the different ways that they're approaching distance learning or hybrid learning, and how can we share that and see what happens. So when you share the recipe to bake bread and then sharing a meal together and those kinds of things, is that once all those families share that and start sharing through social media, then you can also use those to share through the school. You want to make it easy. How do you expect parents to, or students to, share photos with you, videos with you? How do you share, how do you expect them to post things on social media and hashtags and those kinds of things? And in the end, you don't want to overshare. It's okay. So for example, with an art class, it's okay to save some of the things for a future post, so that it doesn't have to be that it just happened. You can also post things and over time. And that way, what's good about that is you preserve and save for a time when you may not have as much to share. Example of that is during exam periods. There's not really a lot to share when it comes to students taking exams and those kinds of things. So back to this idea of text. One of the things, if you've met with me and I've done an assessment of your website, is I'm always looking to see how many times I can scroll without seeing anything but paragraph after paragraph after paragraph of text. You got to find ways to break it up. And so with that, if you're requiring so much reading and you never give me a break, your message really gets lost. And so the text should take me through the experience that you're trying to share. And you want to have a consistent style, a consistent branding, and those kinds of things. And then also, you want to support what you're writing with evidence, things like photos and videos, and even different icons and or drawings and those kinds of things can support it. And it should feel like we're in a conversation, and really that's how I feel it to be personalized, and instead of just pitching me as if you're just bombarding me with what's great. Also with video, in the end, I mean, your homepage video should be about the school or why the school, and those things. Your student and family testimonials. Absolutely, one of the most effective ways to draw attention is to use testimonials. Your admissions content. Sometimes, if you list your admissions information, why not do that in a video format? And what's great is that the cameras that you have on your normal phone now are better than the best digital cameras that were around 10 years ago. And so you can create content using video and those things now. How about campus tours and walkthroughs, especially now in this time when your campus might be closed to outsiders? So having an easy way for them to experience what the school is like. Meet the teachers. Same thing as testimonials, thank you pages, videos where the experts at your school, whether it's the development director talking about the latest capital campaign, or the admissions office talking about how tuition works and if there's financial aid available and all the different pieces. A lot of times a video can show as opposed to text just telling. And oftentimes that will be much more compelling in the sense that it's easier for you to get a conversion. You know, and with video, one of the key things to remember is if it gets too long, it just turns into the same thing as having text after text after text after text. And so one of the things to keep in mind is a 2-minute video has been shown to get the absolute highest engagement. And when it comes to this piece here, I mean, this really breaks down the how. So tells an authentic story and often has more than one voice. And it's okay to have someone standing looking at the camera, but we all know that presentations when someone's standing in front of a room can be very exciting or can be very boring. And the same rules apply when it comes to doing a video that way. Things to add, for sure, if closed captioning, adding music and other audio. So, you know, there's always ways to get music through a SoundCloud or things like that. But then also make sure that the audio is such that it's easy to understand and hear for your audience. The first few seconds are absolutely essential, and keep that in mind, that you want to make sure that your message is immediately understood what this video is about. When it comes to social media, some of the same rules apply, but you also have some options. So in the end, people expect or have less expectations when it comes to the video quality. People are very used to social media videos being filmed on the fly, and as such, the expectation is lower when it comes to quality of the video. And you have an option of going live when it comes to social media. And it's one of those things where you could have a live tour through social media where your head of school takes anyone along on a tour of the school. And this also, with social media, you just don't have to have the same large budget that you might have to have for, you know, the video production and all those kinds of things. Optimal video length, depending on Facebook, you've got about a minute. Instagram, 30 seconds is optimal, but no longer than a minute. Twitter, you're looking at 45 seconds, and LinkedIn, it's 30 to 90 seconds. And that's really one of those things to keep in mind as you're producing this, is that it's also a good way to create multiple pieces of content. So where you break up a longer video into smaller pieces. And keep in mind that a lot of people have mute on all the time. And so 85% of the Facebook videos are watched without sound. Videos within email. Quite frankly, you're going to get a lot more engagement through video, through email, when you include videos. So you can't actually use the video in email, but using the term video in the subject line can increase open rates. Using a video screenshot in an email can increase the click-through rate. So what that means is that the video itself may not be in the email. However, the email has a photo, as this one here, example here, and when I click on that, it takes me to a link where the video plays. Also, adding the word video into the subject line will increase your open rate. So that's one of the things to try if you're really struggling getting people to even open the email, let alone click on things and move on. Photos and social media. Bright, warm faces and places always get the most attention. Stick to color and really have the emotion, and they should feel like they're very natural, and those kinds of things. And in the end, is it consistent with your brand? And so one of the things that, even though I can play with the effects and do some really artsy effects sometimes, one thing to keep in mind is 24% more engagement for color photos than black and white. Faces and places are the most compelling. So rather than just putting your school's logo up as a post on Instagram, for example, you're going to get a lot more attention if you have a student standing with the logo at the school, or with the logo on a t-shirt, and those kinds of things. And also the idea of going somewhere is much more interesting than really reading about it. So keep in mind, faces and places are great ways to get more effective interaction. And then all of this applies to your website as well. So your photos should be of high quality, and then resized for the web. And then you should also use alt text. And what alt text means is that when someone hovers over the photo or has a screen reader, that they're able to determine what's there, and those kinds of things. Use photos to divide the content. So one of the ways to break up those word walls where you have 3 scrolls worth and 20 paragraphs worth of information that you have to pass on, a great way to break that up and a great way to reduce the amount you need is to break that up with photos. And the photos, again, should be consistent to the brand that you're trying to show. And what it comes down to is with photos, you're able to show, and that will reduce the amount of text you're using to tell. So again, photos over graphics if need be. Photos get 156% more likes and 300% more comments than graphics. So it's okay to have some graphics, but you should also mix in the photos. So if using graphics, aim for 1 graphic on your feed per week at the maximum. And you can see here how with this school, they're able to break it up. Use few words and big fonts. So it's okay to use graphics, but then make it so that it's more effective. And then save them for important announcements so that they stand out. Add photos to your newsletters. So I think this is pretty straightforward when it comes to it, but it's the same as all the other reasons that why you want to use photos. It just gets a lot more attention, and you're able to tell the story much quicker and draw people in almost immediately, and those kinds of things. So for your emails, even if you're just adding a headshot in, try adding at least 1 photo or 1 image in every email, and see if you're not getting a higher open rate and a higher click-on rate and those kinds of things. But also keep in mind, you can also add too many images, so that you want to make sure in a newsletter that it's also, you're still giving people the information that they're looking for. So for text, add emojis. I think it's become pretty acceptable in most areas to add an emoji and those kinds of things. So real quick, when you compare the way these two things are written, let's start with the first one. We are nationally recognized for providing boundless opportunities in which students can learn and grow. That was then changed to learn, grow, and explore boundless opportunities in nationally recognized academic programs. And so there's a lot more when you use action words and those kinds of things. And it doesn't feel like I'm talking about myself, because it's not we are nationally recognized. This is learn, grow, and explore. That's how the child who's coming to the school will learn, grow, and explore, as opposed to we are nationally recognized being the lead in. It's okay to be funny, but also you need to make sure that it's almost like trying to match your brand. You want to make sure that if you're being funny, that it's not tone deaf, number one, but then also that it fits the message and it also fits the style of the school and those kinds of things. Text, first impressions matter. So if you see here, there's some text on these pages, but what you immediately recognize first is a smiling family, or a smiling alumni, or a smiling teacher, or a smiling student. And then there's also the graphics that are in here, and it's very clean, very nice, and it's not overly wordy. And also, in this case, the blue here makes that stand out and then is supported by the rest. Social media, longer isn't always better. And just because Twitter now allows you to have more text doesn't mean you have to use all the characters. So captions with 150 characters or less get the most engagement. Let the photos do the talking. And it's also important to remember that this doesn't mean you necessarily have to do new things. You can just take what you have and show it in a much more compelling way. It doesn't always need to be spend more money. So that is the time that I had for presenting, and I wanted to take another 5 to 10 minutes now to answer any questions. I'm just going to go to the chat box